Hey, what is going on, guys? Project Era Season 5 has arrived, so in today's video I want to talk about some of my first impressions I got from playing Era Season 5. We'll talk about first a really important tip that I found that you can use to get through some queue and server issues. We'll then talk about the player counts across the various modes. We'll then talk about some nice quality of life features that are available from day one. We'll briefly discuss the weapon meta and if anything has really come that's not expected, and then finally we'll talk about other issues in future updates. Okay, first off, let's talk about queue and server tips. So I know a lot of you are having issues with not being able to get into games correctly, server crashing, all that. Unfortunately, if you're already in the game and the server crashes, not a lot you can really do there. However, there is a trick to make it easier for yourself to get into games. Generally, I've noticed this is not really an issue in solos, but more often in duo and squad. When you queue into the game, it instantly says waiting for server, joining server, you load in, you load for about 30 seconds to a minute, and then you get kicked right back out. In testing, what we found is that basically what's happening here is when you click queue, it's not actually checking for if there's a game available, it's basically just sending you into a loading screen, and then if there's no game available, you just get kicked right back out. Basically, what you have to do is, I know it's a bit annoying, but just continue to queue. If you continuously queue, when the game that's currently running ends, eventually you'll catch the next game and you should be able to get in. So don't be discouraged too much by getting kicked out a few times. It may take 5, 10 tries, but eventually you should get in. They are aware of this issue, so this should get fixed, but just do note, if you're getting kicked out, it doesn't mean that that game mode is disabled. It just means, there's not a lobby available at that point in time. In addition to this, when you die in a game and you plan to stay in that same mode for the next game, one thing you can do to bypass this issue is just spectate until the game ends. Either A, someone wins, or B, the server crashes. That way, you'll know exactly when you get back to the lobby that, hey, there's actually going to be a game available and you're not going to be kicked out repeatedly. Next, let's talk about player counts. And player counts have been really solid. Queuing into EU solo, it is very possible to get a 100-player lobby. I mean, 90 plus is by no means unusual. EU duo, I was pulling up to 50 players, and there were a lot of queuing issues, so that's a really good sign. EU squads, I got as high as 35. On NA solo, I pulled as high as 40 to 50 people. NA duo, 10 to 15 people. So overall, the player count is significantly better than it was at the launch of Season 4 with Flux, and it's way better than it was at the end of Season 4. So overall, most of the modes are playable. It's really great to see, and once they get those queuing issues fixed, server issues fixed, it's possible it could go a little bit higher. We'll see, though. It could drop off as the week progresses. That is expected, but this is a really good place to start. So even if it drops a bit, we should still see several modes being playable. Of course, one thing they probably should consider is maybe once we get a few days into the season, only do solo and then rotate one other mode. So duo, squad, or LTM and rotate them weekly. That way, player counts stay reasonable in each mode. Definitely something they should consider. But right now, especially on EU, having solo, duo, and squad is perfectly acceptable. Okay, next, let's talk about quality of life features. Well, the great news is that Siphon, both health and materials, is working at the start of the season. Now, historically with Era and Flux, this has not been the case. If I recall correctly, Era Season 6, Era Season 8, and Flux Season 4 at the start, none of them had Siphon, and this is just a recurring issue of every new season. I don't know if they forget or there's a problem, but it doesn't make it in. Great news is it's here right now, so excellent. You spend less time looting, less time farming mats. Really glad to see this. Yes, it's not historical, but I think Siphon is a really great feature. In addition, the seasonal battle pass is working. You're able to get it as soon as you play your first game. A lot of the challenges are working. Not all of them are, which is pretty typical for a new season, but it's good to see that at least most of them are working, and of course, I'm sure they'll work on the bugs as we go forward. Okay, next, let's talk about the overall weapon meta. Overall, I have to say, I didn't really notice any non-historical things that are in there. One note is that the guided missile is available. I don't think the guided missile is that amazing. You can build a box to counter it. It's not super amazing, but I do think it's more useful in squads. If you have one person in the back just throwing rockets at your opponent, could be situationally decent. I think overall the RPG and even grenade launcher are going to be more versatile because those are more effective in solos, and guided missile not effective at close range. RPG very effective at close range, so just something to keep in mind there. But overall, the meta is very free and diverse. The majority of weapons are genuinely competitive, and nearly all of them are at least usable to some degree. Pistol, that's not very good. Thermal AR, not great either. but they're not. Those two aren't even that terrible, relatively speaking, compared to something worse, like the OG SMG when it did 11 damage, or the crossbow. So honestly, this meta is very good. There are also no weapons I think are overpowered. Season 4, the drum gun was ridiculously broken. We don't have weapons like that anymore. So I think this is a really great meta. And depending on whatever you like to play, your play style, you should be able to find a loadout that'll work and fit you. So I'm really glad to see that. In addition, mobility as expected is to a medium level. I think that's great. Nice balance between being able to move around and keep the pace of the game reasonable without getting third-partied too much. Finally, in terms of other issues, yes, server crashing cannot be ignored. I frequently was having a really nice game and then, pop, the server crashes and, well, all you can do is leave. My only tip is, once you see the connection timeout, don't wait more than 10 to 15 seconds. It's very unlikely to recover. Just get yourself into a new game. I know it sucks, but it's just the reality. The good news, though, is developers are aware and working on fixes, so we should see patches in the coming days. And that also goes for any challenges that aren't working. So, with that, I hope you're enjoying Era Season 5, and I'll catch you in the next one.